Welcome to Tiny Game Chronicles episode 48. My name is Marcus, and here with my good friend Michael. Every other week, we discuss games that are quick plays, but epic journeys. It is great to see you today, Michael, as always. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, Marcus. Looking forward to getting started on this discussion about the game today.
Yeah, before we get started, though, we're going to be talking about a game, Hypogea. It's a 3D platformer. I was curious, Michael, what is your favorite 3D platformer?
Yeah, so for someone who didn't grow up with Nintendo, I kind of need to skip all the Mario games, Super Mario 64, Super Mario Odyssey. So maybe those are the games that I still will play one day, as I recently did invest in a Switch 2. But I think if I look at who was the first person when I got married who bought a console for us, was actually my wife, and she bought the Wii. And the game that we had most fun with was Rabbits Go Home from Ubisoft.
Okay.
From the
I
Wii
wasn't expecting that answer. I wasn't expecting Nintendo. I wasn't expecting. Okay.
However, Marcus, so that was a wonderful adventure that I had with my wife. So my wife, if there's only one console that she played in her life, it was the Wii. She could identify it with the joysticks and things like that. But I think the greatest, since then, one of the greatest platformers of all time probably has to be Astrobot. Just because it's fun. I don't know. There's a lot of nostalgia if we think back. Is it now 2 years ago, right? That Astrobot launched 2 years ago? I think so.
Yeah, almost 2 years exactly, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other one that I have very fond memories of is the Sackboy Epic Adventure. So the little Sackboy kind of jumping around. So what about you, Marcus? I would imagine that your experience goes way back before 2009, but I could be wrong. Let's see.
Back before 2009 for sure, but I'm not unlike you, Michael. I'm not the biggest Nintendo honk out there. Like I don't have a ton of experience with Nintendo really beyond the SNES. I did play a little bit of Mario 64. It was quite the revelation when it came out. I do remember playing that. I would agree with you. Given all of that, I would say I would agree with you that Astrobot is probably the best 3D platformer, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. But my favorite, let's say my favorite, I'm gonna give it. Maybe I'll give a honorable mention first. Jak and Daxter, the original Jak and Daxter PS2, very good game. I really like that. That it's kind of like the blueprint for the type of 3D platformer that I tend to enjoy. But my absolute favorite, being the Sony pony that I am, Tearaway, Michael. I really liked Tearaway for the PS Vita.
Oh wow! Yes.
I actually have the platinum for it on Vita. I have the platinum for it on the PS4 version. Came out a year or two after. I really liked Tearaway, and I really liked the features that it made use of. Kind of all the PlayStation Vita features that it made use of.
Correct. Beautiful
really
example. I didn't even think of Tearaway, but 100%. It definitely was a game that pushed the envelope back then. I also played it. I loved it. Unfortunately, I never finished it. But yeah, definitely. I can see why you loved it that much.
Yeah. It's so charming. Such a charming game. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It had a lot of that Little Big Planet energy, but I think like the papercraft and the I don't know, all the interesting features that it used from the Vita. It was really good. Yeah. Okay, Michael, before we get into talking about our game, which is, again, Hypogea today, just wanted to mention our previous episode on the game Tacoma by Fulbright Studios. Kind of a sci-fi future setting of a game, and kind of a really neat AR, augmented reality playback mechanic. Otherwise, the story was maybe a little over my head until afterwards. Until afterwards, I actually researched and took the time to kind of like understand what the heck was going on.
Yeah. Also, as I said, I also loved it. I obviously had my thoughts about the supposed inventory management, right, that we were exposed to. But other than that, I think it definitely has a story to tell that is still pertinent today. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you haven't played it, then by all means, please put that on your wish list and give it a try.
And slow down. Don't do like I did. Slow down and
Yes.
take your time with it. Don't go through the all of the dialogue
Yeah.
quite so fast. Okay, Michael, let's begin our discussion about Hypogea. Hypogea released on PC on November 9th, 2025. It was developed and published by a French solo dev from France by the name of Charlie Wagner.
Mhm.
The Steam description reads that Hypogea is a short, atmospheric 3D platformer where you play the role of a staff wielding automaton trying to escape from an abandoned underground megastructure.
Mhm.
Gameplay involves using your hooked staff to pole vault and grab structures in the environment. There is some light puzzle solving, and there's a series of collectibles like many 3D platformers that include artifacts and recollections of the people that came before. Doesn't have an open critic score, Michael, but does have nearly 800 user reviews on Steam, and it does have an overwhelmingly positive rating from those reviews. It was actually first brought to our attention by a community member by the name of Slugcat Stew,
Mhm.
who did write a glowing review of the game over on So Many
So
Games.
many games.
hmm Okay, Michael, we start out our conversations by asking ourselves three questions. What platform did you play it on? How long did it take you to beat? And what are some high level thoughts you have about the game?
So I initially started playing this on PC, just because of failing eyesight, right? I said, okay, well, let me enjoy this on my bigger screen if possible. However, I really struggled with the controls, Marcus. I think we spoke a little bit offline, that I have an Xbox controller, and for some reason, it wasn't as responsive as perhaps I needed to be. I know this game gets a little bit getting used to with regards to the control mechanisms. I then made the decision, because this game doesn't have a lot of reading, thank goodness,
Yes. Yeah.
to go over to Steam Deck. And it was a day and night kind of difference with regards to the way that I was able to control our protagonist. So I continued the game on Steam Deck and finished it on Steam Deck as well. It took me just over 6 hours. I think it took you about half that long. But I think for me, because I love exploring and I went on a collectible hunt. Now you mentioned the artifacts at the beginning, so I decided to investigate every nook and cranny that I could. Um, yeah, and the way that I feel about this game, kind of top line thoughts. I mean, this is a journey upwards, if it makes sense, because it starts kind of in the bowel of the earth, somewhere buried deep within, and you're journeying upwards all this time. So it definitely had this idea of, ascending from a grave, if that kind of makes sense. Um, I absolutely loved what Charlie Wagner did. I think he built something that is quite effective, as it has no dialogue. You only have a little bit of, uh, I think, music. You have a hook staff as a tool, and yeah, you're trying to make your way through a dark world on towards the light. And I thought that this was not just a game about movement, but also a game about memory.
Mhm.
So, Marcus, how was it for you?
Yeah. So I played this entirely on my Steam Deck. I think it worked great on Steam Deck. So no issues there. It is a verified game, so that tracks. It did take me, as you suggested, about 3 hours to beat the game. I thought I was kind of being like pretty thorough, but apparently not. I think I got maybe a little over half of the artifacts. I did get
Mm,
almost all of the memories, recollections that are scattered throughout the environment.
mm,
So, but yeah, I obviously not quite as thorough as you. And then high level thoughts. I really liked the game, and it's one of
Mm,
those things like I think that there's no dialogue. We
mm,
mentioned as we were introducing the game last episode, no combat.
mm.
Basically, you are platforming your way upwards through these
Correct.
different kind of like levels and sections within this underground megastructure, and some light puzzle solving along the way. I never really got stuck. There was a couple of spots where I was just like, I'm not quite sure. It wasn't really a puzzle. It was like I don't even
Mm,
really know where I'm supposed to go. But for the most part, the game does a really good job at kind of like leading you, pointing you in the right direction, and
correct.
everything being fairly obvious, despite there being, again, no instructions otherwise. Like I think it's quite well designed from that perspective. Um, and as you had suggested, this is a very, which we'll probably get into when we talk about our stand. It's a
Mm,
very empty world, but there
yeah.
are moments of light, let's
Yes.
say for now,
Yes.
and I think it made those even more poignant. And by the time I got to the end, it's kind of emotional, this
Mm,
game. I wasn't expecting that.
mm,
So I'll leave it at that. We'll probably get into a few of those things a little bit more as we do our deeper dive discussion. But overall, very good experience. From I think, a game that presents, at least on the surface, as being pretty simple and straightforward.
yeah.
So,
Totally agree, Marcus.
okay, a brief reminder for listeners about how we talk about games on Tiny Game Chronicles. We like to identify 3 things that we think stood out about a game. Could be good, could be bad, probably mostly good stuff. These are things that we think we are going to remember a year or two down the road about the game that we just played. And we do our deeper dive discussion on each of these standouts. We also, most of the time, will do so here, avoid spoilers. And we won't get into any of the narrative, kind of like any of the details of the narrative, although a lot of this is for this particular game is inferred. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of direct narrative that's being told here, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we could really spoil it all that much, even if we wanted to. But nonetheless, we'll try to keep kind of particularly the details around the ending of the game. We won't. So if you haven't played Hypogea, you're safe to listen. Okay, Michael, it's time to get into our standouts for today. And the first standout that I think we have to get into is the platforming, the traversal in this
Mm,
game. So before I pass things over to you, I just wanted to kind of maybe do a quick rundown
yeah.
of what it is we're doing. So I mentioned right off the top that your main character has this hooked staff and uses this staff in a few different ways for traversing the environment. So obviously you're a character, you're a 3D platformer, you can jump. But when you're jumping, you can use your hooked staff to hook onto ledges or
Mm,
different, like, I don't know, rings
hooks.
and things, hooks
Yeah.
and things that you could hook it onto. But then you can also use your hook staff to it almost functions a bit like a double jump. You can like you plant it in the ground, and then it like puts you you go to the top of the staff, and they can use you use the staff to be able to reach higher ledges than you would be able to if you're just jumping from the ground, right? So that's one thing. You can also use it if you kind of like get a running start, almost like literally like a pole vault, like you
Correct.
see like a pole vault or the sport pole vaulting. So you're kind of like planted into the ground right before you're, and that allows you to get some extra distance. Um, you can do some rolls, which kind of just, I guess, create like a more fluid sort of situation. I don't think that really helps in terms of the traversal
No,
in any way.
no.
It's more just
So,
like it makes things a little bit more fluid. Um, there's sometimes actually later in the game where you can jam your staff into the side of um, certain
walls,
textured
textures
walls.
on the walls. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and allow your kind of self to jump from one section, jump forward on the section to kind of reach an additional platform.
It made me
Um,
think of Jedi Survivor, when you had those
okay,
wall runs a little bit, right? Where you could
yeah,
run along the wall. Here, you basically jam your pole into the wall, right, to kind of
exactly.
move forward, and you keep
Yeah,
jamming the pole forward as you
yeah,
continue, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So how did you like overall the traversal in this game? Because it's obviously it's a big part of this game. There's no combat. You're mostly just moving throughout this environment using different strategies that I've kind of outlined here to traverse it, to navigate through it.
I think it's definitely a pre-programmed rhythm that you need to get used to, and if you think back of another platformer that we played quite a while ago, I think soon after we started our podcast, Zao, full title escapes me, so just put that in there.
Tales of Kinzera Zao.
Tales of Kinzera Zao. There we go. I really have an issue putting the right button combinations together, if that kind of makes sense. If you
I was
remember,
wondering if you were going to struggle at all with that part of this game. So yeah,
no, but I think here it is pretty simple because there isn't a myriad of buttons that you need to follow. I think they're basically two main buttons that you need to
just two. Yeah, it's basically
exactly.
like the jump button and then whatever button. I think it's, I don't know,
It
the
is
button to
hook,
use the staff,
exactly,
to hook,
and to
or
use the
to,
staff to
yeah,
whatever, exactly. It
yeah,
lets you double jump or whatever the case is.
yeah.
And Marcus, you know that I'm like the one button player in the
Yes.
ideal scenario. So two buttons I could manage. It wasn't too bad. But as I said, when I played with the Xbox controller, I wasn't having that experience, and even then I changed like the layouts that Steam has available to kind of see whether the difference would be noticeable. So if we could just look at my controller here. So like the X and the Y button, then if you just change the layout, then it would be B and Y as an example. But seriously, it wasn't responsive enough, and so that's why it could also be why my playtime, right, is a little bit longer because I probably struggled for like half an hour to kind of get that straight.
Yeah.
But once I was on the Steam Deck, I could really get into the flow, and the flow really is, to jump, maybe double jump if it needs be, swing, and then jump again or jump with a hook, right? If that kind of makes sense. So it always was some or other combination, but in a flow using those two buttons. And I think that really, really worked well as part of the traversal experience on the Steam Deck. Obviously, timing is a key issue. I'm not exactly whether you felt, Marcus, whether this is a precise platformer per se, but there are phases in the game where I thought, okay, this game is quite generous, right? Because I don't know, maybe I missed a chain that I needed to hold on to. Maybe it was a little bit too light or too rough. So sometimes, obviously, the game is unforgiving, and when you fall in water, and then you start again that run, right? So I think you had some of those experiences again.
Sure. Yeah.
But I found the game being in certain places you kind of needed precision, but in certain aspects the game was extremely graceful with its saving points. So I never needed to repeat a whole, I don't know, long run because I missed maybe kind of the last section before the next saving point. I think in a way that game was gracious and something that I could quite enjoy. I didn't have like I was playing Mina the Hollower type of feelings, right? So
right.
So yeah.
I would agree. I think I think this game is very generous with its platforming. I would definitely say that it's not a precision platformer. I think like there were often times within certain aspects of the levels where it's like, that doesn't look like a jump I could make, even though I like, just in terms of visually, but obviously that had to be the direction I was supposed to go. So I try the jump anyways. It's like, oh no, I made it. Yeah, I made it. And I don't know. I don't think that's a negative about the game, but like there are definitely times where it felt like maybe the depth perception, it didn't quite match with what my expectation was. But yeah, I think it was generous, which is a good thing. I think that it would have become incredibly frustrating if this game required you to make very precise jumps. So yes, it's generous, and I think that's a good thing. I struggled a little bit early on with I found that the camera, because you can control the camera, it wasn't quite sensitive
with your
enough
right
for
stick.
me. But there are options to increase the sensitivity. So once I kind of I adjusted that, no issues. So because in early on it felt, not fighting with the camera is not the right word, but it wasn't sensitive enough.
Yeah,
I was, it was taking me too long to turn around, because there are definitely times where you're just like climbing stairs or something, like a
exactly.
zigzag back and forth, and you'd have to whip the camera around to stay behind you, and it would take too long and it felt a little off. But there are options if you're feeling that. That's probably very much a personal preference sort of
Mm,
thing, but gives you the option to change that. um but yeah, I think the it took me a couple of times to get that pole vault timing down to allow you to get extra distance on your
correct.
jumps. But again, you practice it lots. And the other thing that I would say too is the pacing is really good. So like
Yeah,
in terms of, it doesn't require you to do a lot of, none of the platforming is overly complex to begin with, as you've suggested.
yeah.
But like um when you have like maybe a section where you're doing a bunch of jumps in a row, or a jump and a swing and a blah 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 to the next move, then it allows you to sit down and kind of reset yourself and move on and explore a little bit before you have to do the next section. So the pacing of that platforming is also quite good. So um this isn't like, this isn't the Astrobot level of
Yeah, absolutely.
platforming
Yeah.
here, but it works and it's good. And I think the generosity of the platforming uh, makes it, is a real strength, I would say, of the experience of playing Hypogea.
One of the things I wanted to ask you was right at the beginning when we traverse through, you mentioned the stairs, right?
Yeah.
There are some jumps we need to do between ledges. And some of them are like an extended jump. It's not the double jump. It's almost like you need to press L or move L when you're ready in the air to reach the ledge.
Mm.
Um, I'm not sure whether that is actually repeated throughout the rest of the game. At least I didn't use it, and for me it was totally okay because then I used the hook
Yeah.
to kind of hook on a ledge if that had
Mm.
needed me. So for me, I think pressing L or shifting L up was part of the. We have like a mini tutorial right at the beginning, and that never really worked for me. I'm not sure whether that was for you, whether you still recollect needing to push L to kind of in the jump still be able to reach the edge.
So when you say like the left gyro stick or
Exactly,
the bumpers?
exactly. No, no, no. The left
No.
gyrostic. Very
Yeah,
good.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I did it intuitively. I don't
Okay.
remember ever having to
Okay.
specifically do that to make jumps.
It
It's
was
like,
part of the tutorial, but then
really? Okay.
yeah,
I don't
yeah, and
even,
then
yeah.
okay, okay. All good.
I'm not saying that I missed it, but I don't know that it didn't stick. Maybe I started doing it a little intuitively, but I definitely didn't focus on having to do that.
So
Interestingly. Yeah.
okay, okay.
Okay, Michael, let's move on from traversal and move on to our second standout. And that is, you played as this automaton who's trying to escape this megastructure, and there's not a lot
Mhm,
of life or
mhm.
s- anything really in this megastructure. There's a lot of platforms. It's very empty. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about the emptiness, so the feeling of emptiness that exists within this game. Because for me, it definitely struck me that
Mm,
um, it is cold,
yeah,
dark, empty for the
yeah,
majority of the game, which I
yeah,
think, as I mentioned when I was talking about my overall impressions of the game, it makes those brief, moments of life and companionship that you encounter that much more poignant, because this is kind of like a very oppressive environment feeling sort of game.
yeah. I'm totally with you, Marcus. I'm going to give shout out to Stuart O'Donnell who actually wrote the article on so many games. I found one of the sentences that he wrote kind of summarizes, I think, what you were mentioning. He says that the caverns are clearly a long forgotten place, buried deep out of sight in memory. It's a place that feels cold and completely desolated. And I think exactly that this game gets that desolation across, and it's in stark contrast with the camaraderie and the contacts that we experience within places. And aspects that I wanted to highlight here, Marcus, was the aspect of music.
Mm.
There is music, but it is so subliminal, so um, minimal in its execution that it again kind of just highlights the silence and the desolation that is there. Did you feel that this was like an effective way of storytelling? Because I mean, it obviously made this a standout for you as well, right?
Yeah, I think it I hadn't thought of it
Mm,
until you brought it up. But yeah, the
mm,
music absolutely contributes to this feeling of emptiness and coldness and
mm.
darkness. It's not something there are no bops
Correct.
in this music
Oh,
soundtrack, right? You're not
no,
like bopping your head and like really grooving out to the music.
getting
No,
into
this
the
is
flow.
it is a very atmospheric
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
soundtrack to this game, and I think that really contributes to it. If we're going to kind of move along, talking about presentation, you know,
mm,
and how that contributes the art style, the color palette for the
mm,
vast majority of this game is very brown and
totally.
gray and dark, like and blah,
It's
right?
like a Bethesda game, exactly. Yeah.
It's like a Fallout game,
Like a
especially. Yeah,
Fallout game,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, like it that all contributes to this feeling. So that when you do see, you know, again those shots of color, it's like it really hits because it's
totally.
like, oh wow. And it's empty. This world is empty, but it's not fully empty. There are, you're an automaton, a robot who, well, not a robot, an automaton, right, Michael? So you're encountering other automatons
Mm,
throughout your thing, but it's sparse.
correct.
There's not a ton of them, right? And so, like, by and large, you're walking around it's pretty lonely place, right?
Mm,
And yeah, I just again I'm thinking of into the terms in context of our standouts. I
yeah,
will remember the feeling that this game gave me in terms of it just feeling very dark and desolate. But then there are moments of brightness.
absolutely.
Um, so
It's
yeah.
a little bit, and we both spoke about this offline, at least while we were playing the game. We shared exactly the same note. It reminded me of Journey,
Hmm.
right? And you as well, right?
Yes.
Because it definitely has that, I don't know, those moments of desolation, perhaps also loneliness,
Yep.
um, of a world that seems to be completely forgotten, or completely inactive.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and Journey is I think a great comparison. I would be frankly shocked if Charlie Wagner didn't take Journey as a bit of an inspiration for parts of this game.
same.
Um, More recently, Stray, Michael. It
It's
reminded me
true.
a little bit of Stray without cats. Stray
Yeah,
without the world of Stray without cats.
yeah,
Is very similar to this world of Hypogea too.
very good.
Okay, Michael, let's move on to our third and final standout. This is something you really wanted to get into. So we're going to talk about our standout of the word hypogea, the meaning of hypogea. I think
Yeah.
like it's a it's a word I guess I was not familiar with. So regale us, Michael. What does hypogea mean, and what did that contribute to the game and the overall experience?
So this is exactly where the game stopped being a platformer for me, and I was really looking for meaning. As you know, I like going into the meaning of words. The etymology of hypogea was something that I was really interested in, and so let me quickly go into maybe some of the aspects that touched me and moved me in the story that made me curious. So, as a maybe a light spoiler, right? You mentioned that we are seeing recollections when we encounter these offline automatons, and there is a short little, like a movie or a recollection, right? That you see, and it kind of resembles like there is a war that is taking place. And just with regards to how things were addressed, it reminded me of World War One,
Mm.
so a little bit older. Um, and for me, the definition of the word has to do with the subterranean structure of a building. Some could also say a tomb or something that was prepared and built for the deceased. Right, we have it in Egypt, but we also have it obviously in our modern day. And you mentioned so wonderfully the difference between when you corrected yourself, you said automation or automaton and not robot. And there is a small little difference between those two because an automaton comes from the Greek word kind of something that moves on its own. And it historically describes a mechanical figure, but it's built with artistry to mimic something that is alive, very
Mm.
much like a human being, with the purpose to evoke wonder. And the word robot is a Czech word, and that describes a machine that is purely built for work, right? And so that's for me here. Here there is a difference because hypogeum, as it literally means an underground chamber for the dead, um, has to do with perhaps how we bury things that cause us shame. So, for example, it for me deals with what we call the repression of something. So, for example, the world wars and how these world wars were caused and what moved us. We kind of tend to push away as a species, as a human beings, if we notice what the results were of it and might not make us proud. There are some modern examples, like, for example, what do we push underground? Nuclear waste, when we
Mm.
put them in some sort of concrete containers that we hope last for 10,000s of years. In history, we still have mass graves, right, that are unmarked. If you look at Paris, a city not far from here, we have the Paris catacombs, right? The cemeteries are too full. And so we have about 6 million skeletons in the catacombs of Paris just because the cemeteries are overfilled. If we look at Germany, still, 80 plus years after the war, every second or third month, there's a bomb that's discovered that is kind of
Mm.
lying underground, either at a construction site or at a residential site that they're still, as I said, discovering. And these are all things that are kind of still lying underground that we kind of push down, that we kind of repress, which are kind of part of our history. And I think the thing that Hypogea says, that these things that we bury underground are things that we can't keep there forever, because eventually, and this is the story of Hypogea, it finds its way out. It finds its way right upwards, and then we kind of have to deal with the consequences when something like that does come out, because then we need to face maybe something that we were not able to deal with before. And this was kind of a quick method, right? How to I don't know how to deal with something like that. Um, and for me, it's always a little bit like a horror story, right? So whatever kind of comes forth is something maybe then that has a different face than what it has before, and it's something that we now then need to learn how to confront. So I don't know what the world would look like in 10,000 years when we need to confront with all the nuclear waste we've put away, right? But this idea of a automaton army, which is what Hypergear kind of refers to, and this is what you will find also underground, it's not a thing that is new. I'm not sure, Marcus, whether you saw the Chinese New Year celebration. They have all these kind of fancy robots that are dancing. You might have seen that in the news somewhere.
Like
Where
this past year?
this past year
Oh,
exactly,
really? No, no,
where they
no,
have
no.
like I don't know, like groups of hundreds of dancing robots dancing in sync with each other, and it kind of made me reflect on like a country like China that's investing heavily in robotics per se. Um, yeah, where they're kind of showing a little bit of the terracotta army of old, if you think about
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
you have, tons of thousands of stone soldiers that are used to demonstrate, I think, the psychological might of a country, right? So obviously, it was used for war strategy per se. And I think this kind of display of imperial might of modern robots or automatons as we have them is a sign of that maybe Charles wasn't that far off in what he was trying to communicate, Charles Wagner, with regards to we kind of still have an element of that world currently here with us. So yeah, at least in the story of Hypogea, when the robots come out, it's a benign story, if that makes sense, right?
Mm. Well, it's an interesting perspective. Certainly something I hadn't really thought of, but like I thought of before you
Mm,
expanded on this, but like human beings don't like being reminded of things that make them uncomfortable.
correct.
And so like the idea that we would bury things that were signs of things that we're ashamed of, or you know that happens all the time. Like you gave a bunch of
100%.
examples, and that is presumably part of what is happening here. But as you said, nothing stays buried forever, right? We could talk about this in terms of like psychological kind of trauma, past things. We put that aside. We can't deal
Yeah,
with that right now. We put it
yeah,
underneath. Um, Whether it's maybe it is literally a physical thing, like nuclear waste or automaton armies that are no longer needed. We're ashamed of that stuff. We don't want to deal with it. We put it underground and we close the lid and we push it down as far, but it never stays. It never stays that way. So you do have to deal with it. And I don't know if ever putting things underground is the best way to deal with something, like
100%.
because I had recently read a book called "The City in the Middle of the Night" by Charlie Jane Anders, and it's an okay book. But there's a quote from it that I'm going to mangle. But basically, it was
Let's
something
go for it.
like, "Human beings' like greatest strength and weakness is the ability to forget." So
Correct.
it's like I think from like a societal perspective, I think being able to kind of put that stuff aside, put things that we are uncomfortable with aside, I think can be both beneficial, probably more in the short term, but also in the longer term, it can be quite detrimental because we have forgotten that
Correct.
these things were problems in the past, and then we end up repeating our mistakes, right? So, uh, yeah,
And
it's
I, I
there's
think
a lot here, right, in this game that it kind of
100%.
allows you to start pulling on some threads and examine kind of humanity on a bigger scale.
And I think the fact that, and I mean, we played a wonderful game last year, which was Game of the Year for many, Expedition 33, that talks exactly on this theme,
Mm,
right? Which is about repressing uncomfortable memories. And as soon as you start repressing uncomfortable memories, you start living in a fantasy, right?
yeah.
Something that is not necessarily real. Spoiler for anyone who hasn't played Expedition 33.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But I think you're 100% right. I think the repression is okay. We just need to find a way. How can we generate lessons and apply these lessons in our lives so that those mistakes are not repeated? However, that hardly happens, right? So eventually the vampire rises, right? Eventually the ghost starts haunting, right? the buried thing that you buried gets its revenge, right? That's what horror movies are made from. It just comes back wearing a different face, which then also means a new challenge for you to face. And I think there are lessons here in this game, at least that made me reflect on, this part of the human psyche, right?
Mm.
Let's try
Yes.
end on a positive note, Marcus.
Yeah. Well, let's end on a positive note. So let's actually transition to our community standout. So Slugcat Stew, aforementioned Slugcat Stew, did write in with his standout or thoughts on Hypogea. So I'll read that now. He says, Hypogea's wordless anti-war narrative moved me deeply. The game's understated tale of resilience, community, and solidarity in the face of callous, faceless cruelty both felt timeless and timely. The tender, quiet storytelling has a myth-like quality to it, echoing a tale I've heard somewhere before. Plus, the movement is liberating and exhilarating. My favorite 3D indie platform ever.
Wow.
High praise from Stu. Thank you
I
for
guess he
writing that in,
didn't
Stu. That's
play.
awesome.
Absolutely. I guess he didn't play Astrobot. So.
Well, it's not. He said indie. He did qualify. He said
true.
indie
That is
platformer.
True. That is true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Okay, Michael. Well, we can wrap up our discussion here. We always end these things and end our conversations by asking ourselves, do we recommend the game? And if so, to whom?
So I would say a definite yes. I think if you enjoyed a game like Journey, I think Journey would be a good, although it's obviously from the build up, a very different story, but it kind of has similar elements. And I think if you enjoyed the one, this would be familiar to you. So definitely the wordlessness, right, of the story. There is hardly any dialogue, if any. And you also need to have the patience, for a story kind of not to explain itself too loud. So there is a lot of aspects of the story to be read between the lines. And I think if you trust also the environment to tell you a story, just like the broken gears do in some of the caverns, right, that we encounter, then you'll be able to read this game like a diary. So I think Hypogea rewards you if you're patient. The game takes run about between 3 and 4 hours, I think, for a normal run. Might take a little bit longer if you're looking for every collectible that there is to find. But it's definitely is a game that will make you look forward, continuing that journey upward out of the grave, out of the Hypogeum, if that makes sense. Yeah. Marcus, how about you?
Yeah, pretty strong recommendation for me. I think that if you enjoy 3D platformers, this is probably a game for you. If you enjoy kind of thoughtful, like not surface level narratives, like kind of a deeper narrative, which we do here on Tiny Game Chronicles. I think that like I think there's something here. I think the brevity of this game is a real strength. I think that if this was a 7 or an 8 hour game, I think that might have been a little long, at least for me. Yeah. So I feel like that 3-4 hours. I think How Long to Beat has this at about 3.5 for the average playthrough. So I think that's a real strength of the game. And I think like I found this game emotional towards the end. You really get connected to your character and the little relationships that he has with his other automaton companions or people that he encounters. Yeah. So yeah, it's a pretty strong recommendation for me. I think I would agree that if you enjoyed Journey, I think that this fits that bill. It hits a lot of those same notes that Journey did. So with better platforming, frankly, than
correct.
Journey. So
that is correct.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, I guess that's it for episode number 48. A little bit of housekeeping before we wrap things up here. Of course, we would really appreciate it if you shared, liked, subscribed, and left us a 5-star review wherever you happen to be listening. And aside from that, you can follow the show on Blue Sky at Tiny Game Chronicles. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Marcus O'Neill 79. You can also find me on the 2 other podcasts that I do, Hype Factor, Fantasy Critic podcast that I do with my good friend John 32. That's a monthly show. We talk all things Fantasy Critic. Our most recent episode was talking about all the biggest Fantasy Critic mistakes that people tend to make. So that's probably more geared towards the kind of the newer Fantasy Critic player. So if that happens to be you, you can give that one a listen. And then my other show, Brothers from Another Mothership. That's a monthly show that I do with my good friends Ron, Matt, and Quag. Our most recent episode, we discussed and debated the various Mount Rushmore lists. So the top 4 lists of various gaming related topics. And that one was a lot of fun to do, Michael.
Very nice. You can also find me on Blue Sky, and that is under my IGN Drellish, DRELLESH, as well as on our Tiny Game Discord. The link to our Discord will be in the show notes. And last but not least, you're also able to find both Marcus and me on our YouTube channel. So where at least once a month we will be posting, or twice a month, we'll be posting some shorts, right, with regards to the games that we play. And we'd love a follow and a like there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can also find our largely unedited episodes. I just can't be bothered to edit the video so much, so I do a little bit of editing, but it's a light edit. So if you prefer more of a raw take on the episode, you can check us out on YouTube, and certainly, like Michael said, give us a like and a follow over there. You can also find us on we're writing articles on so many games. The website there is so many games.co.uk, and I would strongly encourage our listeners to go check out Michael's most recent article for 1997 Reloaded. I think it was fantastic. I loved every minute of it, Michael. And yeah, it's a really, really great article for a game that I know hit and spoke to you quite a bit. So
absolutely. So go on to so manygames.co.uk, and I think just have a look at all the wonderful games that the team is putting together. Also an inspiration for us. Thank you so much.
Okay, Michael, the last thing we need to do is introduce our next game.
Another deep game, Marcus.
Well, we'll see. So this game, Michael, released only not even 2 weeks from recording. So very recent release, July 15th, 2026. It was developed by Atame Studio and published by Kodansha. In this game, as a sushi chef apprentice, you make sushi, train it, and compete it in races.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael, the name of this game is
Wabi Sabi Sushi Derby. It's a mouthful, Marcus.
It's a mouthful. There's a yes. It's sushi chef is a tricky one to say. Wabi Sabi a little tricky to say. Anyways, Michael, you've played a little bit of this game. It's almost like a kart racer, but you're doing sushi. And you have to upgrade your sushi. Yeah.
And it's a wonderful light game. So there is no real deep narrative. It really is one of those sushi cleansers. If you're thinking about a palate cleanser as an example, light, hilarious game where you are racing against other pieces of sushi in a restaurant with the hope of not being eaten. So I'll leave it at that. It's for small money. I think it costs about $5, Marcus. And for the fun that you're going to have out of it, I think it's great. So don't expect, I don't know, like some deep philosophical musings about us in the next game. I think we'll talk about the way that we enjoyed and raced our sushi, which will be a very different conversation, Marcus.
Well, we haven't done a racing game. We're 48 episodes into this show, and we have not done a racing game. So you suggested this, and I was like, yeah, let's do it, because I like doing, trying to get a good variety, right, of games.
Exactly.
So yeah, this should be fun. Only a couple bucks. So listeners, you have no excuse not to pick this up and play it along with us. So so that you can share your standouts that we can read on the show next week, next episode.
I look forward to that.
Okay, Michael, I guess I can just end things there and say thank you for listening, and we will be back in 2 weeks with Wabi Sabi
Sushi
Derby.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.